Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Hightop Sports Game Day. It is week 13. We have one more week left of the regular season, ladies and gentlemen. Let's soak it in. Let's appreciate it. Some great matchups today. A lot of games could be defining for the college football playoff. Ohio State, Indiana. The Hoosiers been disrespected all week long. Ohio State lose two alignments. Get a big one. Ole Miss travel to Florida. A lot of drama there. New girlfriend, ex-girlfriend. Could be, should be, could get sloppy. And A&M, Texas A&M and Auburn, could be one of the other Tyler's famous golden ticket games. And then Army, Notre Dame. We've been hearing about it all week. The last few weeks from Tyler. Should be a good one. Let's go ahead and introduce the co-host for this morning, I should say. Tyler, Cowboy Ty. How you feeling, baby, for the big week?
Man, I love it, man. We're getting closer and closer to that start of that playoff, and man, that playoff just keeps getting better and better.
The mayhem is starting to ensue with the matchups that are happening. Again, it starts with we'll dive right into it. This matchup kicking off at noon. I called it Game of the Year because of how much is kind of relying on this game. It could end up being one of those games that is such a massive turning point that if Ohio State wins, I think it kind of loses its sexiness, right? Because then they're saying Indiana is just out of it, which could cause a riot. If Indiana wins, is Ohio State then out of it? Right? Like it's just then Indiana's in the Big 12 championship. I mean, it's such a monumental game of how this whole new playoff system could work out. Again, I always say the committee finds a way to get out of it, that the teams usually bail them out here, but this could be an interesting one because, again, can you really take the Hoosiers out of it if they lose this game? But let's talk about the matchup. -10, it was 13. It swung 3 points this week. A couple days after the news of the center being out and the left tackle, I believe, is out as well. Could Ohio State be in for a doozy here, Ty?
I mean, when you sit back and you watch it, once again, we talked about this last week, and it has a lot to do with it. It's an emblem. I mean, we're talking about just Ohio State Buckeye compared to a huge Hooter. If you go back and you watch and you did a blind resume on both these teams, you'd be like, oh, okay, well, I would pick Indiana if it was blind. We didn't know who was who.
Sure.
So, like, the disrespect that teams get because they've never been here before or they haven't done this. It's not like Indiana escapes just by a little bit every single game. They beat people pretty handily. The only game they really had trouble with was Michigan, and that's fine. Like, I get it. Michigan's a good program. Like, you just had a bad game. Like, it happens to every single team. Look at Oregon last week against Wisconsin. If you step back and you look, like, these guys, they use a lot of different players. They use the players to their abilities, and I think that's what makes a great coach. So, like, you can have, like, mediocre talent, but if you find the guys and you find their good niche and what they're good at, you can sit there and you can use all their guys in their different situation, and that's what Cignetti has done in Indiana, and he's got them believing. So if you connect with your players and you don't have five-star talent and you use them to a scheme, which they do, that's what makes a good football team. And then you look at Ohio State, who has some of the best talent, and all it is talent. It's not guys playing together. It's just talent, raw, absolute talent. And I personally would take Curtis Rourke before I would take Will Howard if you wanted me to go quarterback for quarterback. So I don't know. I don't know the disrespect for Indiana. And if they lose and they don't get in, I think that's a super slap in the face. And the reason I say that is because they do play in one of the best conferences in the Big Ten. And we're going to call that the second best conference behind the SEC. That's what I would call it. And if you don't put a 10-1 team from the Big Ten in, I think that is a super disrespect.
The one loss being, arguably the
would be Ohio
second.
State if they lose. I'm just saying, if they lose, the one loss would be Ohio State. Like,
the one good thing about what I love about college football, what I love about this is that although, the media and the fans have been saying that Indiana wins haven't been fantastic, that this team doesn't match up very well, I don't think the Indiana players believe that or know that. I think they can go toe-to-toe with Ohio State today, as they should. And I think you nailed on the head as Ohio State is a pack full. If we're thinking MLB, NBA, whatever, they're the Dodgers, right? And we got Indiana's just playing straight money ball out here. Just got guys going in the right places. They're going to hit their blocks, right? They're going to do their assignment. They're going to do everything right for all four quarters. I don't believe Ohio State outside of maybe Oregon, but Oregon doesn't necessarily hit every single block and everything exactly right. Or Indiana just does everything right. They believe their coach blindly, and that's a recipe for disaster if you're Ryan Day. Ryan Day always finds a way to lose a big one, and I'm not quite sure I'm a huge fan of him as a coach. And you're going up against a guy that has just outcoached everybody. He hasn't outmanned everybody. He doesn't have the most talent. We've heard it all week long. The talent doesn't match up. So what does it come down to? Coaching.
And you don't have to have the best talent.
No,
You don't. It's simple. You
I
don't.
think in
You
a
just
weird
have
way, the NIL. This is what I love. If you love college football, this is why you should be a Hoosier fan today, because he encompasses everything that we love and appreciated about college football just years ago before NIL came in and made it what it is today. Not that I don't appreciate what it is, but the complaint is that nobody plays for the logo anymore. Nobody plays with heart. Nobody plays about care. That is this Indiana team to a T. Like, these guys aren't getting Lamborghini NIL deals and $10.5 million to come play for Michigan. No, they're playing for Indiana and Kurt Cignetti. There is something about that you have to appreciate, and I think it's going to carry some weight. We talked about it with Florida and FSU this past week, that it's not a transactional relationship. And if you can find an Ohio State team kind of on the ropes, when you're going knit to grit into that fourth quarter, this Indiana team's solid. They've believed in each other. They played the same style of game all year long, playing for each other. It's going to come into a big time moment with this game if this game's close towards the end. I'm loving it.
Yeah, and if you sit back and you look, like, I guarantee you at practice, I can guarantee you they're not practicing like an 11-point underdog. I can tell you that team thinks they
No
deserve to
way.
win. I can tell you they think they deserve to win. I promise you, at practice, they're sitting there and they're looking at it. And why is this team 11 points better than us? Like, they're insane, because in their hearts they believe that they are better than Ohio State. And I think they're a better team. They're obviously not more talented, but I think they're a better team, and that could come a long way. Because the most important thing a coach can do, there's two things I always say a coach can do. The most important thing is have a offensive and defensive scheme to the talent of your players. Don't make them go into your scheme. Surround your scheme around them and connect with the players. And he does both of those to a T. And once again, I think that's the biggest factor in coaching.
The spread, obviously, we've talked about that plenty of times here. We'll talk about it the next game here in just a moment, because, again, it gives you a quick little insight. It gives you what the professionals think, and then, of course, the people adjust that line based on their bets, and people aren't as dumb as we think they are, especially when it comes to betting. And where the money goes, that's usually where things are moving pretty good. Like I said, this thing moved 3 points on Thursday from 13.5. Got to wonder what it was, because the news of the O lineman that had already came out. So what was the big cause for some movement? I think the line was ridiculous at 13. It probably should have been more like a 7-6 point game. You could argue it could be closer, but I think, again, the whole talent acquisition for Ohio State is what was pulling that ahead. But I mean, we're going to talk about A&M and Auburn. Here in just a minute. It's 2.5 point spread, and Auburn hasn't given me any reason to believe that they get pissed with anybody. But here we are. We're gonna move into that now, because that is our golden ticket game, which I love that. Now I learned that from Cowboy Ty this past couple weeks. And again, they're going into Auburn, so I understand that they're going on the road, A&M. But just think about it. Outside of A&M getting clapped just a few weeks ago, we had serious conversations about them being a real contender because of how they were managing themselves. They got a little exposed, obviously, in the beatdown that they took. But Auburn, like I said, with Peyton Thorne, this offense has never found an identity. They're in shambles. Or the coaches complain. They just don't seem to really got it. I think that interview came out of Mike Elko saying, kind of slipping up and saying they were only focused on Texas, like they're looking ahead, because that is the big time matchup that is going to determine who plays in the SEC and determines A&M's future, because they're a 2-loss team, but not in the top 12. And Ole Miss, Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, all 2 losses, all in the top 12. So if you're A&M, you're kind of looking at it like, hey, well, what's going on here? So, good.
Yeah, I mean, no, you're good. I'm just saying, I'm sitting here thinking, and I was thinking out loud.
Yeah, no, it's interesting.
You sit and you look, and I think this is a matchup thing. I think this is a 2.5 point spread. Obviously, they're in Auburn. There's a couple things that go into it, and the thing is you look, and Auburn wants to run the football. Texas A&M, they also want to run the football. And you sit back and you're like, well, what does Auburn do well? And Auburn's, best thing is they control the clock. When they're playing their best, they control the clock. And they've been in a lot of close games. They're 4-6, but if you go back and you actually look at their schedule, like the Missouri game, they easily should have won. They blew that game. And if you sit back and you look at Texas A&M, you're like, well, what did they do? And like it's like 4-6 against what 8-2, I think they are. So you're like, oh well, this is an easy win, but that's not how it works, because if you go back, Auburn lost by 10 to Arkansas. They lost by 6 to Oklahoma. That Georgia game was a lot closer than the score shows, 31-13 between the hedges, because I remember we talked about that game. The Missouri game, 21-17, and then the Vanderbilt game, 17-7. So, like, they don't get blown out by any stretch. So, I think being at home against Texas A&M and being in the situation where they run the football well and they control the clock, and Texas A&M kind of wants to do the same thing, I think they're looking at a grinded out, like, this could be a 17-13 kind of game or 17-14 or something along that line. And so when you sit back and you look, I think that that's the game we're going to kind of get. But I don't know why it's not 3.5 and not 2.5. To me, that's kind of insane, because I feel like the field goal with the hook is kind of when you sit back and you look, it's just it's a really, really weird line. And I think the situation is because, once again, the matchup, and secondly, you got Texas A&M maybe looking ahead to Texas, but
Yeah, look, I don't see it. Again, Auburn hasn't given me any reason to believe in A&M. Again, their future is on the line here. A&M could be a spoiler. And we're going to talk about Florida Ole Miss here in just a minute. And honestly, it's the same game, really. But Ole Miss is favored by 10.5 or 11.5, depending on where you look. And again, this Ole Miss team, I think, offensively wise, is fantastic. Defensive, it's a great football team. Don't get it twisted. But I would take Florida over Auburn any day of the week right now. So we'll get into that. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. But A&M, they've only lost to, well, not only, but they've lost to Notre Dame, and they lost to, who did they get skull dragged to? South Carolina.
South Carolina.
They got embarrassed by South Carolina. But South Carolina's not a bad football team. They got 3 losses. They look really good. So not a bad losses. 2 losses for Alabama. Vanderbilt, who's not even ranked anymore. Not skull drag, but Vanderbilt. And then Tennessee in a close one. So if you want to look at losses, A&M's losses are better than Alabama. Straight to schedule, they probably will give to Alabama. They've played some dogs. They have an LSU, Tennessee, Georgia, Mizzou, obviously ranked at that, and they're still ranked, I believe, or they shouldn't be anymore. South Carolina, obviously, now is a ranked win. A&M, though, A&M has played Notre Dame, Mizzou, LSU, South Carolina, and then they have Texas. So their schedule is much, much easier. So, again, this is what a lot of people are talking about, like, is it straight schedule? Is it this? Is it that? Their losses aren't as bad, in my opinion, than Alabama's. They've got good wins, too. Maybe not as good as Alabama are. That's not really besides the point. I'm not kind of advocating for A&M. I don't care for it. But this game is, again, it's going to be very telling for A&M. And could they be on upset alert here? I think there's a lot of games this week that are, again, going to ruin a lot of people's seasons depending on how things go, especially this Army Notre Dame game. Let's actually talk about that after we go into our sponsor here at BetUS. Be sure to check out BetUS.com. Use the code YouTube150 to get back 150% on your first deposit, then $125 on your next 2. This parlay, boys, it's a spicy one. We'll have Ty talk about it here. I took the X off because I feel like I haven't done you guys any favors. All right. I took the Hoosiers plus 11. I like them. I wanted to take a money line. I really did. But I feel like that might, like, I bought into a little bit into the sauce of, like, maybe I'm crazy. I've watched the Indiana team. I like them. I think Ryan Day finds a way to get the choke. I don't know. Army plus 14. Do I feel good about it? Cowboy Ty is in love with it. And I just want to go ahead and believe him. So this is a Cowboy Ty pick. All right? I don't know if I feel too confident about it. It's a Cowboy Ty pick, and I wanted him to talk about his Notre Dame and Army game. And then I took A&M like we just got done talking about because I just think it's ridiculous that it's 2. It's basically a pick 'em. You get into that 3 mark, it's a pick 'em to me. Like, I just don't see these games. I don't see it being like a 17-15. I think 17-13 is good. So 3.5 is kind of that's that perfect little sweet spot. So 2.5 to pick them. I think A&M handles their business all day long. But give me your thoughts real quick on this Army Notre Dame game. We don't have it on the lineup, but I know you're chomping at the bits here.
Well, no, and yeah, I root for the underdog. I'm a big underdog believer, and I love when I see somebody like Army, and obviously their name's Army, so they're not going to get the respect. But when you step back and I looked at their games and I've watched some of their tape, and if you look at Bryson Daly and what he's done, if I blind resumed him against some of the other guys that we're talking about in the Heisman, you would go, damn, who is that guy? I want that guy. And the fact is like no one knows who he is because he plays for Army, and it's whatever it is, what it is. You're not going to get the hype, you're not going to get the respect, you're not going to get the spotlight. But the guy has 21 rushing touchdowns. He has 1,050 yards. He even missed a game this year, and he's got 7 touchdowns throwing with 1 pick. So obviously, if you go back and you look at Army's how they run their offense, like he only threw for 677 yards, but he's a running back playing quarterback. I mean, that's what it is. But He's good enough to throw the football. He's good enough to throw the football, and he's a great runner. So I've said this before, and if you go back and you watch what Notre Dame looked like against Navy, we're going to sit back and I did like Navy to cover in that game. But if you go back and you watch the game, if you take away the drop balls that Navy had, because Army's going to run this very similar to, they were moving the ball pretty well.
Yeah, they had 6 turnovers. Plays. It was atrocious.
6 turnovers. And Navy hadn't turned the ball over all year. And it wasn't Notre Dame forcing the turnovers. It was Navy giving them the ball. I mean, they were dropping it.
Yeah.
They were basically handing the ball to Notre Dame. So, obviously, I don't think Notre Dame's going to be that fortunate again. And Army, the thing I love about these like military teams is these military teams, they're going to fight 100% every single play, and they're going to give you 100%. Now, Notre Dame doesn't usually lose because they have more talent, but I'm just telling you that this game is going to be a lot closer than people are giving credit for. And I think the spread's the way it is because of the names. Obviously, Army, they have no emblem, and Notre Dame has no emblem. But if you see two golden helmets, you're going to take Notre Dame. But, Notre Dame's playing great football, and I will not take that away from them. Like Riley Leonard has found a spot. I remember at the beginning of the year, I was like, man, this guy is no bueno. And they have literally developed.
Figured it out.
And they look great. They absolutely look great.
I think for college football, I mean, I don't like to be that guy and beat a dead horse, but we all kind of think if you either love Notre Dame or all the rest of us are college football fans because of they just kind of carry themselves like we can play in our own conference, we do what we want. And so it's like we don't really want you in there. You got to get in you got to lay down with the fleas, baby. Become with the dogs. So until then, I don't know if you're going to earn your stripes. And look, they've had a hard schedule. I'm not saying they've tiptoed around, but I think there's something about playing in games, and they have a little bit of their own little rivalries with the USC and things like that. But you got to play in a conference that you really got to get a feel of things. I think when you can knick-knack your schedule together, it's the only team that does it. Like that's an advantage. You could say it's a disadvantage. I just don't think that it is because you're the only one doing it and you've done it for so long, and there's a reason why you won't get away from it. Obviously, TV deals, money, all those things. Yeah. So could they be in it? It'd be okay, yeah. But what I would honestly, personally, would love for them to lose today and make room for either another SEC, honestly, another ACC team. I think only one's going to get in. And now, hopefully, because I want SMU to win the ACC championship just to rub it in Miami. Does Miami get kicked out? I don't know. That's a big question. A Big Ten team of Indiana gets disrespected. I don't know. Big 12, I think 2 could possibly squeeze in. So I'd rather see another one of those teams from those conferences, another SEC team like this A&M. Like there's more teams that I think have gone through more of a gauntlet that I would like to see because Notre Dame has never impressed us. But this is a really good Notre Dame football team too. I like Marcus Freeman a lot. So this isn't like the Notre Dame teams of past. I feel like they've grinded their way through and played A&M, got a big W there. And since that loss to Northern Illinois, I believe, they have been on an absolute tear and have not looked to be wavering at all. So as much as I want to sit here and say all these things, they've been really good this year.
Yeah, and they are. And the fact, I think I think we're getting closer and closer to Notre Dame football joining a conference. I know it's all money. I know it is very frustrating and annoying. Obviously, I think that conference they join is the ACC. But at the end of the day, like everyone's tired of, oh, it's money, it's this, it's that. Like, stop being an independent. We're in a different age of college football. This is not, back in the 60s, 70s. Like, get in a conference.
There's plenty of money.
Go
Figure
win
it
a
out.
conference. You already play the ACC pretty much anyways.
Yeah,
Like, just go ahead and join the damn conference. Uh, I'm sick of hearing about it's money, it's this, it's that. We don't have to do this. Like, if they lose today, they're out because they would have losses against Northern Illinois and Army. They're out, completely done.
sure.
They have no leg to stand on. They can't get a conference
Unless
championship.
there had to be some catastrophic things happen in front of them.
Yeah, well, yeah. When I say done, I assume that crazy things aren't going to happen. But this is college football, and crazy things could happen.
They lose
But
their control.
they 100% lose what they can control because everyone's going to see that, and it's going to be completely. I think they're dead because if you go back and you look at the teams they're fighting against, then you have a one-loss Indiana team in the Big Ten, and they're going to look at the Big Ten and they're going to go, "Oh yeah, we want that team before we take Notre Dame," and these are going to be the problems that they have in the future. If they have these bad losses and they have nothing to stand on, they can't get a conference championship, they can't get this, they can't get that. This is the problem they're going to have. So I kind of want them to lose today so they do get knocked out and then they need something else. Then they realize that maybe joining a conference is probably the move. But everyone's like, oh, well, they got this contract and this contract and this contract. This is football. This is money. If you have enough money, you can do whatever the hell you want.
For sure.
This is the world we live in.
Yeah.
Like if you have enough money, you can do whatever the hell you want.
Exactly.
So, and Notre Dame has it. And I love what Marcus is doing over there in Notre Dame because he does. They haven't played physical football, and I haven't seen a Notre Dame football team this physical in a long time. And they are playing great ball.
Tail days type of football right there, boys.
Right. And Riley Leonard running the football and throwing the ball a lot better since that Northern Illinois game. He had looked like a completely different player.
Got their guy.
Found their click.
Got their guy dialed in. Big game. Season on the line for both these guys. I think Florida has found a little bit of, and it's weird. You're like, maybe you able to shoot, and all of a sudden Florida's back. Listen, we need a little bit of light, all right? And you give us a little bit, you give us a little bit of hope, and there's more that you can capitalize on this. You can capitalize on a W. A win today is a guaranteed bowl game, which is massive. I've talked about that, why that's such a big deal. You also carry some momentum with recruiting that Florida has heated up on. So when I say season on the line for them, that these are all the things riding. Right, the future for Billy in Florida, maybe not this season, maybe it's next season. Right, that's the season that's on the line, and of course, Ole Miss. There's no secret there. What is on the line for them? They lose and they're out, so they have to win out. They won't play in the SEC championship no matter what, unless Georgia drops. No, Georgia's in because they have no more SEC matchups, so they won't play no matter what. So again, they win and they are in for Ole Miss. So this game, and why I said earlier, there's a lot of spiciness here. There's spiciness from us, though. Billy and Lane have a mutual respect for one another. Billy talked about this in his presser because both their fathers passing. They've related over that. There's no bad blood between them, from my understanding, even with all the noise, obviously, earlier this year, like Lane Train's coming, Billy's losing his job, Princely Umlalen goes over to Ole Miss, right? There's this back and forth here of where it's become it's not like a rival, but because of the transfer portal, these games have a little more pizzazz to them. And of course, with Lane Kiffin, that a whole thing being a situation. People talk about cheering for Lane when he's going to come to Florida. Now it's like, well, Lane got an extension. Billy basically got confirmation like he's good to go. There wasn't a timeline on it, but there was at least a boost of confidence, and there seems to be a turn of the tide here for Florida. Big time matchup. Again, a 12-point spread seems crazy to me. I think they really feel that Ole Miss is going to be able to pull away with that offense, and I don't disagree with them. Here's a weird little thing, though. Ole Miss has 2 losses. LSU and Kentucky. Ole Miss has 2 losses. Florida to beat both of those teams. Now, that doesn't always mean everything, right? Because it's not that they're playing each other, but that Kentucky team played them very hard. Tough defense, who Florida had to go up against and manage very well, right? And not a very good offense in Kentucky. Kentucky didn't have much of an identity on offense. Florida, with DJ Lagway back there, is something special. You and I have talked about that week to week. And something we've been saying, too, is that Lane said it in his presser, which was awesome because I have been beating this drum, is that the stat line does not tell you the entire story of DJ Lagway. He literally infects the offensive side, the defensive side, and the crowd. It just is a complete different energy on all sides of the football game. And he said that. He goes, when you got a player like that can make both sides of the football field play better, that's something to keep an eye on. And that, again, is crazy. But one player, quarterbacks do that, but it gives the other side hope. And the defense to me, when you got the scheme right, you got good players, the rest of it just comes down to how hard you want to play and the energy to be there. That's what makes a good defense. We were on the football field for 41 minutes, the defense was last week, and they didn't break. It's a big thing coming to this game is too. What are your thoughts, Ty? I'm running here, but it's my team, baby. I'm ready.
I mean, you should be super excited for what you see in the future. I mean, I would be if I was. I can tell you if I had those players on my side of the field, Florida State, I'd be pretty happy with what I see in the future. I can tell you. But if you sit back and you look at what Florida has done and the adversity that Billy Napier's faced, the adversity that the team has faced, and all of those things combined, how good they are right now is absolutely amazing. I'm not saying they're an amazing football team, but after all the adversity they faced and where they are as a football team is very impressive. Because once again, all at the beginning of the year, this is the worst team we've ever put on the field. This is that, blah blah blah. And then Napier's getting fire Billy in the stands, and that whole team is stuck together. They have 100% just blocked out the noise from the outsiders, and they have come together as a team. And Lagway, being a freshman, he doesn't. It just seems like he has more to him than just football knowledge. By that I mean he carries himself well. He's never in a press saying, "Oh, our coach is an idiot," or whatever the hell you want to say, like some freshman could do at his level when he is the number one player in the country. He's just getting there. He's getting better. He's listening to what they have to say. He's becoming a better football player every single week. And like you say, I say it all the time, the stats don't tell you everything about a player. And you can sit there and you can watch how he carries the field, how he carries the team on the field. You can watch how he runs the offense. You can watch how he just talks to his guys, everything. He looks the leadership part, and that's something you can't guarantee from any quarterback that you draft. You can't guarantee a leader, and when you make both sides of the ball play better, that's a leader. And the reason is because they know that no matter what happens, like they're still in a football game.
Yeah.
It doesn't, like back in the day, if you don't have a good quarterback or you don't have a good leader, it's like the defense can play worse because we can't score or we can't do this or we can't do that. But when you have a leader like DJ Lagway has become already as a freshman, you get, you get the guys that stick together and on the sidelines and they're like slapping hands, and it's like it's a camaraderie and they're all together in it, no matter what if you're on offense or defense. And it's the defense isn't bitching at the offense isn't bitching about the defense. They just play together, and DJ keeps them together, and he doesn't complain. He doesn't do any of that. And I'm rambling, but it's impressive what I've seen from him as a freshman. Not just his ability, it's it's the way he puts himself on the field.
What he does is an intangible item. You just can't really put your finger on it. You feel it, you see it, but you can't really point to a metric or what it does, and that is where it's so powerful. But this game, it's very similar to this Ohio State Indiana game, and the reason I say that is I think Florida, what I was just saying too, is playing as a unit. They're playing together just like Indiana does. Schematic wise, things are a little bit different than that, but they're playing for the logo. They're playing for each other. That's a scary place to be if you're on the other side of the ball. The difference is that the talent that Florida has matches up with Ole Miss. Indiana, you could argue, is not close, right? Florida is not like they're just playing with scrubs out there. That was our frustration at the beginning of the year. It's like, we got a talented football team. There's no question. I'm talking about Caleb Banks now looking like an NFL prospect. Cam Jackson, that's our defensive lineman. That's looked fantastic. NFL wide receiver, caliber wide receivers, and Jameer DK and Elijah Badgers. They won't be, I don't know how they'll go, but those are it'll be NFL caliber guys. So there's talent there. And the youth of talent, oh boy, don't even get me started. It's massive. So that's a big one. And I think that is where, look, Ole Miss, I see why. They're on a little bit of a rhythm. They found a little bit of a tempo. They've clicked since that Arkansas game really got things going for them. They're coming off a bye. And they're thinking, well, Florida, they've been going through a gauntlet. That is also what fires me up, is that at this point, they're conditioned. They're seasoned for this. They're in the middle of the damn marathon. They're mile 13 at this point. There isn't like, I got to go run it. hell, you're in zombie mode. You're just going through it like I'm battle tested at this point. You can't. This doesn't phase me. Ole Miss. I did Georgia, Texas, LSU back to back to back, bro. What's one more? So that to me, I think that is something too. Is that you're coming into a well battle tested run and a well oiled machine at this point to a revamped fan base, a wild fan base on a new kickoff. I'm going today, and it's 42 and frosty out there, boys and girls. It's gonna have a nice little warm buzz to you. You get that when it's cold like that. You can put a little more in the tank, right, to get that flow going. Get a little extra boozy booze. But because it's so cold outside, it kind of counters the intoxication levels a little bit. You know, it's science. I don't know the quite science of it, but it works. All right, don't test it yourself. Just believe me. I'm telling you, it works.
Yeah, I mean, if you step back and you look at this game, and I think the line's actually going the other way. Like Ole Miss is now favored by 12 points, and to me that's crazy. I
Yeah.
think that's not what we're looking for. I mean, Lane Kiffin has been known to lose big games, and let's face it, the next 2 weeks are big games for him because he has to win. And I don't think they're dead in the SEC. I think you said that, but they both have them and Georgia have 2 losses. Tennessee also has 2 losses. But Ole Miss holds the tiebreaker over Georgia. So I don't know how. I'm not sure how the tiebreaker.
Well, if they lose, that'd be 3. They'd be 3 losses. They'd be out.
Well, if they lose today, yes. If they lose, they're dead. I don't disagree with that
statement. Oh, but yeah, I'm pretty sure Georgia's ahead of them in the standings.
They are because one is 6-2 and one's 4-2. Georgia's done with their conference. Ole Miss is not done. They have 2 games left.
Oh, so if they went out, they're in. I got you.
Yeah, Understood. That's the only that's weird, but yeah. The way it's set up, but yes.
Yeah, sure.
But if they win their next 2, they above Georgia. But I don't know how the rest of the tiebreaker works between Tennessee. I don't know where that comes into play and all these new tiebreakers and stuff like that. I'm not sure. But once again, getting back to Ole Miss, I do think they're playing their best football they've played all year, and that's super important at this time of year. However, I also think Florida's playing their best football. So it's, Lane Kiffin got their offense rolling. The defense is what's been more impressive to me at Ole Miss because I don't feel like they've ever had a front four that can actually get after quarterback. And they got some pass rushers and they can flat get after you. But they've got to be physical like they did against Georgia to win because Florida can run the ball and they're physical and they got those 2 freshmen. And once again, freshmen are dangerous because they don't have a care. They're playing. They play hard. They're trying to show that they belong here. They want to show the world that they belong here. And their running back trio, if Montrell plays, I don't know who's playing today. I've not looked yet or seen.
I think he's good.
Montrell, he's good to go. So
but I think he's
bringing Paul.
I don't think he's lost his job, but he played last week. He wasn't out last week. He played.
That's why I see. Like I said, I was watching it, but
he came in for a drive. But it was the ball show. Yeah, so I don't know if they're just protecting him or if it's like he's just outrunning you, bro. I don't know. I haven't heard much, but
I mean, it could just be like they felt like he wasn't 100%. Let's give him a little bit more rest. And as a football player, you don't want to sit there and watch a freshman take your job. You just don't. So sometimes you try to come back quicker than you should.
Sure.
And maybe that was the case.
He came in and he was effective. I mean, he's a senior running back. It's not like he knows what he's doing. And what I love about Montreal, the guy falls forward 3 yards almost every time. And it's one of those things that it's unnoticed because he does it. It's not flashy. He'll just run into the pack and it's 1st and 10 and it's 2nd and 5, but it didn't feel like a 5-yard run just because he just kind of disappears from it and then falls forward 5. So
those are the stats that are important.
Yeah,
that you don't look at.
Yeah, you don't see them. But then at the end of the game, man, this guy got 80 yards. Where?
Right. Yeah. Where did he get 80 yards? Well, he fell forward for 20 of them. So,
yeah. He ran for 60, fell forward for 20. So it's a special talent in Montreal.
That is an important part of running the football that people the regular fan doesn't look at. And there's a couple guys that come to my mind. Josh Jacobs in the NFL, he always falls forward. People don't, it is an important factor.
Not a sexy runner, but he runs. Right. He's a good runner. Yeah. Good point.
They fall forward, and when you fall forward, you get first downs and you get more yards and you break a few more tackles. And that is I love that. Because that is something that people don't realize. You don't go backwards ever. So
beats away at it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, week 13 set to kick off at noon. I hate that Florida and Ole Miss play at noon alongside this Indiana-Ohio State game. I've been dying to watch this game, and unfortunately, I have to go to the Gator game. So I have to pick and choose here. So I'm going to enjoy my time. Be watching my phone very closely for this Ohio State game, just watching the score as best I can. I'm sure a lot of people will be, because it's just, if you love college football, you love what's happening around, and then I'll be able to just watch the Notre Dame Auburn game. This Kansas and Colorado game, another one of those golden ticket games, another close one there. Should be an interesting one. I like Colorado here. I know the hype behind Kansas. I just think that look, Kansas, they're kind of like in Indiana. They're a very schematic team, and they have been running their scheme. Their offense is a lot of moving pieces. Colorado has a lot of talent. And I'm kind of, eat my words here, because Ohio State has a lot of talent too. I just think that it's more uneven matched than people are realized, and I think Colorado pulls away late.
Yeah, I mean, Kansas is 4-6, and Indiana's 10-0. So
yeah, it's a little different. Yeah, I think the Indiana's playing much more sound football. This Kansas defense, I think, is going to give a little bit of fits, but I think they played their best defense they played all year, which was Utah last week with Kyle Whittingham. And look, they've had some struggles because they don't have an offense, but that defense is still disgusting. And Colorado was throwing a little bit of that was the best defense they played since Nebraska, and they were throwing some fits early on. But again, you can only keep up for so long, right? When you don't have an offense that can counter. It's kind of what Florida was happening at Texas. Like, we can't just be on the football field all day long with no offense. What the football team that Florida put on the field during Texas, that's been Utah all year. Like, and people want to say, oh, the defense sucks. Like, dude, there's no hope to the other side of the ball. So that's where the defense comes in. It's like, I need a reason to come out here. If there's no reason to come out here. With the offense, you always have this mindset of, like, you have the ability to score, right? Like, so there's something like you can always make a difference. Defensively, like, sure, you can score, but it's not the same. You need momentum from the other side to fire you up.
Ton of good matchups in the Big Ten this week. The BYU game is a huge game. BYU at Arizona State.
Big 12?
Arizona
Big 12?
State.
I'm sorry. That is a great matchup. Arizona State favored. It could find a way to Big 12 championship, but it seemed that it was BYU's to lose.
And once again, I do think Arizona State's a better football team. Like, looking at that football game, they run the ball. They have one stud wide receiver, Tyson. They got the running back can absolutely handle it. He falls forward all the time. I think it's Scatabo, but I'm not exactly sure. I haven't heard it. I don't know exactly. But he came from a Division I AA school last year, transferred to Arizona State, and he's been nothing but incredible for them. Arizona State's, they're probably known more for getting women pregnant than they are about playing football, but now we got both.
Big party school.
The big party school. But once again, like, they're playing, and the matchup I want to see is Colorado against Arizona State for that title. I think that would be the best matchup. I think it's great, So a lot of conferences are going to get. We're going to figure out what's happening for the conference this week in all the games. All the conferences are kind of come together this week, so I'm excited to see which ones come together and who's playing who.
We're eliminating the little late scragglers. We could be seeing a lot of guys be eliminated and really kind of trim off the fat this week. Boys and girls, Cowboy Tie brought to you by BetUS. Hightop game day week 13. We've got one more regular season. We'll figure out how we're going to do the playoffs and whatnot with Hightop game day. I'm not quite sure, because obviously those scheduling is a little bit different. But
we gotta get it in. I'm excited. We got to do something.
We got to figure it out. We'll do what we can do, the best that we can, because how could you not want to cover those playoffs? It's going to be absolute mayhem. Boys and girls, we love you. Happy to see you here on this beautiful Saturday morning. Get your coffee. Get a nice little warm blanket. It's frosty across America today, boys and girls. Be good. Have a happy November. We won't see you. Well, you'll see me here, but for Hightop game day, till next Saturday. So have a happy Thanksgiving. Get some turkey. Watch some football. Just sit back, relax, get fat, have some fun. We love you. Peace and love, baby.